Hello, everyone. This is Mark Vina with More Insights and Strategy. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. This is yet another, what I would almost call like a public service announcement podcast that I've been doing over the last a couple of weeks. I did one earlier in the week with Netgear to talk about great tips while you're working at home and decisions and issues you want to consider when kind of upgrading your wireless router in your home, which is actually, a very, very important topic for a lot of people now who are working from home. And I thought I'd follow up this week with yet another podcast with a couple of veterans from the technology industry with HP, with Hewlett-Packard. I've got today participating in the podcast, Annalise Olson and Kobi Elbaz. And if I'm not mistaken, if my math is correct, guys, you've been with HP a combined, am I going to say this, like 50 years?
Yes, it's amazing. We are so young, but yes.
Combined, we are 50 years.
Well, you don't look that old, which is great. But I know Annalise actually quite well. We've spent quite a bit of time together as I've covered HP. Kobi, I think we haven't met yet formally in person. We're meeting virtually today. But what I want to use today's podcast for is talk about a lot of the great things that HP is doing during this coronavirus situation. I think the tech sector has done such an extraordinary job of really stepping up to the challenge. Not just HP, but a number of different companies have really done some extraordinary things in terms of helping not only their employees get through this situation, and we'll talk about the work from home dynamics and things that HP has done there, but companies like HP are also doing tremendous things, from a private sector standpoint in terms of helping the government, helping the medical industry really help navigate through this crisis in the most expedient way possible. So, but before we jump into that, Annalise, let's talk a little bit about your background for about 30 seconds so they know who you are. Okay. And Kobi, we'll do the same thing with you.
Okay, great. Well, so Annalise Olson, as you said, I have some time at HP.
That's very diplomatic. It's very diplomatic.
I've been fortunate. I've been, I was a long time in the print business and product generation, spent time in our Americas business, regional country roles, spent 8 years living in Singapore, running our Asia PC business, and most recently have come back to print, now running our print category at HP. So right. Office, commercial, consumer, etc.
You know enough to be dangerous, and that's good.
That's right. Good. A little bit of everything. That's right.
Kobi, let's talk about your background.
So as Annalise, I'm fortunate to be in many different positions in HP in many different geographies. I've been a country GM. I used to run the personal system for Europe and Middle East. In Africa region, I used to run the personal system for the America region, and now I'm running the personal system category for globally, for commercial and consumer. And I saw it from all different angles, being in a country, being in a region, and also running a global job.
And that's one of the great things about HP is that a lot of big companies do this, but HP's been doing this for years, is they really take their executive team and over a course of time, you really get exposed to different opportunities, whether it's a regional job, a headquarters job, a product job, a marketing job. So you guys have really got a good kind of lens in terms of the way HP operates. And, what I'd like to talk about, and it's probably a little bit unfair because, it's not, the work from home phenomenon is really not new for HP. HP's been doing that with its employee population for years. I have a number of very close friends with HP, and hey, this is not a new rodeo, so to speak. We've been doing this for a long time, but generally speaking, let's talk about how HP before the crisis began, how kind of HP helped facilitate its employees to work from home, because HP's got, it's a very diverse capability. I mean, it's not just people, let's say, people who work in Palo Alto, they're able to work from home in San Jose. I mean, you've got people, working in many cases from across the country, from across the world, in many cases in different geographic regions. So, Annalise, let me tee that up for you in terms of maybe some of the things that, from your perspective, HP is really kind of focused on in the work from home dynamic.
Sure. I mean, there's no question. I mean, at least as a workforce, we've had flexible work options, as part of our culture and DNA for a long time. even back to, Bill and Dave times in terms of what that's looked like. But I think as we've expanded and adapted, it's really been very much around productivity and collaboration. And I'll have Kobi kind of speak to this because I know this is a real sweet spot for them, especially in the computing side. But, I think as we think about, even in a crisis situation, kind of where we are now, how to help people be their most productive no matter where they are has always kind of been, I would say, especially in the last 5 years, part of our strategy of are you at work, are you at home, or are you mobile and on the go? And so that's been a big way that we've started to frame things, even in how we outfit our own sales force, even in, obviously, we've been Zoom and Skype and all of those tool users for a long time. And a lot of that insight isn't just how we work, but then, of course, how we design our products and solutions very much as well. And, I know, Kobi, you guys have a lot of stats as you look at collaboration and productivity and security as well.
Yeah. So as you both mentioned, I think, working from home or one life experience is something not new to us. I think just in this day, we're doing it probably in a broader scale. And with the way I look at that, I think every time we're talking about working from home and working from anywhere, I look at about in two elements. There is the technology aspect of that, and there is the human and well-being approach that we need to look at. From a technology point of view, I think, you need to make sure that as a company, you have the right infrastructure, you have as many as people can connect remotely and work any time of the day. But you need also to make sure that from a device point of view, you equip the people with the right product, the right device to make their job. And it's not just the notebook or the PC, it's the complete ecosystem.
Right.
I think also, while we looked a lot about working from home or working anywhere, I think we pay a lot of emphasis about security. Are people traveling? They're working from home. They're working from coffee places. They're working from any place. Before this crisis on plane, you need to make sure that they are secure and they are connected to the network through a VPN, and the device itself is secure. And I think the last two elements, I think Annalise mentioned it in terms of working with our people, is enable them with the right tools. Because once you work remotely, you need to make sure that you are productive and you know how to collaborate. So you need to provide the good tools to your people. It can be Teams, can be Slacks, can be SharePoints. And I think it's important. And during those days, I think giving tips of how to remote.
Right.
I think video is a great example to keep the touch and to see each other and working. So there is a lot of tips that we provided to our teams about how to remain productive and engage during remote working.
Well, it's interesting because I think that there's a misperception with some people who haven't worked at home before on an extended basis. And I'm talking about people who call their home office and they're there 90% of the time. It's not, hey, I work in an office and I took the day off and I'm checking my emails. I mean, that's kind of that's a different category. I think there's a misperception that if you work from home on a consistent basis, you're either less productive, you're less collaborative, you don't have that kind of real-time interaction with people. And I have found in my career, because I've been, for the last couple of years, I've been doing this work with Moor Insights, is that I'm actually more productive at home. I mean, I don't know about both of you guys, but I am sure that when you have a major presentation, and at least I've seen you in action several times, it's very tough to do it, actually develop a presentation when you're in the office, because you're being interrupted by people. You're not purposely, but if you have a door that's open, people are going to walk in. And there's the phone rings. And I find that when you're at home, you can really focus and concentrate and get things done. And again, and even from Annalise, you kind of referenced it, with tools like Zoom and others, where you can actually, have a conversation with multiple people at the same time. This is not just a one-on-one engagement. I mean, you're both of you are calling from two different geographic locations. You can have multiple conference calls, and they tend to be, I think, much more focused and more concentrated, frankly. So is that your experience, Kobi? Could you comment on that element?
I would say, from our studies before the situation today, we see, more people when they work from home, they are more productive. think on a global level, 72% of people said are more productive working from home. I will do say something that is important when working from home. For people that work consistently from home, there is a risk that you don't have any more the work-life balance, because you are always around your work. Your life environment become your work environment. And I think it's important to make sure that people, when they started to work a lot from home, and I would say it mainly these days, when a lot of us are in lockdown and need to be with home, we need to build the right routine in order to make sure that we still have the right balance, that you have the time to stop, to walk around or to do a workout, indoor or outdoor. Because otherwise, my experience, if you don't drive this discipline, you can find yourself working nonstop.
Right.
And I think it's important to have the right balance. But indeed, all our feedback from our people, but also from industry survey, showing that people that working from home have more productivity, and if they put the right framework, they have even a better work-life balance.
Right. And, we'll get to this debate, and I think specifically for that reason, Kobi, when we exit this crisis, I really think one of the things that's going to change for a lot of companies, they're going to find out, hey, you know what? We were more productive with a big part of our workforce being at home. So companies that may not have considered the work from home phenomenon in a serious way before this, I think they're going to take a second look at it when this is all over. But here's another question I want to tee up, because, again, the work from home, element is very, very much part of the HP culture. What tips would you give, a new employee who is going to be working from home? I want to start with you, Anne-Louise, because I'm sure you've got some very strong opinions on that. But what kind of helpful tips do you think you would give for the average person? Hey, I'm going to be working at home. What are the first 3 or 4 things I should consider?
Sure. I'm collecting even more tips, actually, than because now that we're all living and breathing it full time, I think as Kobi said, first and foremost, having your tools. And if you're a manager or leader of a company or teams, you need to help enable your team with tools. So, whether that's, computing and scanning or displays or printing, we're seeing a resurgence in that. You've got to equip folks. I think the other one is that you do have to think about your workspace. Sometimes people, and I think especially right now, there's some people who are like, okay, I can do it like this for 1 or 2 weeks, or maybe it'll be 3 weeks. We need to be prepared to understand what is it that can help us really have a sustainable pattern in case we need to work at home longer. So you really do have to create some of that separation of where is your workspace, what tools do you have, and are you set up in a way that you can come to work in that space every day? So the dedicated workspace is important. I think also being able to dress the part. And now I say dress the part in, we've all been on early morning or late night calls where, someone's in their robe or their pajamas and the camera's not on, rightly so. But it also helps you form some separation between your life and work. It doesn't mean we all have to get into suits or, fancy clothes. It's just more like, hey, I'm going to work now, so I'm changing out of that into something else. It also makes you feel better connecting with people face to face. I mean, having the cameras on, having a persona so that when you're in kind of work time. But then also really prioritizing the breaks and the time that you need, so you are not constantly tied to a device 24/7, because during this time especially, many businesses, it's a time of crisis. There are important conversations to have. There's employees to take care of. There's customers to serve. If you don't create some space about how you can separate, you walk the dog, like Kobi said, you make the time for the workout in the morning. Many people have to deal with homeschooling right now, all around the world. And you've got to allow for, when I say dress the part, there's a new definition of what it is to be a professional. And probably that fabric of our work and our lives requires both separation, but also some integration and support of each other to be effective, to work at home for longer periods of time.
Right. Kobi, let me toss that to you. Tips.
I think I will add to what Annalise said. I think there is the normal day of working from home. And I think in normal day of working from home, it's different the situation that most of us are in now. Because now we are also sharing our workspace with all our kids. I have 3 kids at home, and we are all sharing the same workspace. And I think it's important, as I say, that also to our people, that we understand the situation is probably different than the normal days of working from home. And how we make sure that people, we enable them to be more successful and more productive during these days. And I look at that, as I say in the beginning, there is the human and well-being approach that we must take, all of us as an organization, to enable our employee to be more successful. So I think these days, Annalise say, we have kids, they need to connect sometime to school, remote learning. So we need to, all of us, understand that we need to be more flexible with our people time, because they need to, in one side, work, on the other side, taking care of the family. We need to help employees and help ourselves to establish new routines. I used to have a routine going to the office every day. Now I needed to establish a new routine, what I wake up in the morning, what I do, when I take my break, in order to still energize myself to continue to be productive. And I think this is important. And I think I will add one last element that I think it's new for all of us. I think we are all experience what they call social distancing. And social distancing does not mean that we need to be disconnected from the world. So we need to find ways to engage. So to do coffee talk with video, or toast at the end of the day with our small team, when all of us in video, in order to keep this energy, but while all of us always at home and trying to manage family and working life.
Right. Well, both of you bring up a very important point, because one of the consistent themes and feedback that I get from others, and even my colleagues who I work along with, who are all have been working from their homes for years. I mean, Pat Moor had mentioned this to me the other day, because he's been doing it for a long period of time. He said, sometimes you get overproductive. You get into the groove, you're working very hard, and you forget about, hey, I got a family. Because Annalise, to your point, you have to do almost schedule. Hey, I got to spend some time with the kids. I got some feedback on the call I had with Monday from the person I spoke with, is that, so he's been in situations where he found himself working 4, 5, 6 straight hours and had not had a bite to eat, because he got into the groove, and because there was no artificial event like you working in an office where, okay, let's go grab lunch at 12:30. So you do have to be cognizant about that. The thing I'd like to really get into, which I'm sure the listeners will appreciate, let's get into the gear question, in terms of what gear, HP has. There's a lot of companies out there that have great products, obviously, but HP certainly has some terrific solutions that come in very handy from a work from home standpoint. And I will tell you, my personal experience is that I was lucky to get my hands on your new widescreen. It's the 43-inch or 49-inch?
It's the 43, I suppose.
43-inch monitor, which I'm actually using right now. And, it's funny, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, someone would come over to my house and say, why do you have such a humongous monitor in your house? And I can tell you that it is such a, one of the big hot trends in the monitor category are people who get a couple of 27-inch monitors and they put them next to each other. And you can have different documents and spreadsheets, and you can really multitask. But I have to tell you, when you have a single wide aspect display like this HP display, it's absolutely fabulous. I mean, I could not do my work, and especially I do a lot of video editing and I do a lot of other production work beyond that. It comes in very handy. So my first thing I would recommend to someone, consider getting a wide aspect display. But anyway, that's just one observation. The other thing is that it also has a built-in KVM, which is really great, because you can have actually 2 different computers share the same monitor at the same time, which is a very, very cool feature. But Kobi, since you're the kind of the product guy for this call, let me ask you, what would you recommend?
I would say, first of all, it's really depend on the user use cases and what you use. There are different users, and they have different needs. If you're doing more creative works, you probably, or graphic designer, you need probably different devices. If you are a salesperson that need to work from home. So I think it's really depend on what what is your use case and what you're working from. I can talk about my personal experience. You use yours. So
yeah, please.
So, and I'll tell you also why. So I'm using, first of all, as a device, the Dragonfly. And I think what beauty, it's the HP Dragonfly, is the notebook. there is the background behind me about the dragonfly. But the reason why I use it is because you have, beside being a great and light notebook, you have very good sound system. We're working from home. We do video conference. You want to have a good speaker, a good mic without putting external devices. It's coming with this. You mentioned wide screen. Okay, so I have a 34-inch curved display because when you work so many hours from one location, you want to make sure that you have a good angle. You don't need to stretch your eyes and looking at the small screen, and you can do some multitasking between video conference and working together. I think printing is important. I find myself last week being at home printing more than I used to print in the past, but also the ability to be able to scan documents, sign them back in my job, to email them back. I think it's important too. So I think depending on your use cases, I think those kind of environment that you create around you, it's important. And I look at the complete ecosystem. It's not just the device. It's the PC or the notebook, the screen, the printer, but also headset. If you are in a place that your family is around you and you need to have a noise cancellation, you need to equip yourself with the right noise cancellation headset. So those kind of things are important when you set yourself to work from home.
Right. And what's particularly great about HP printers is that I love the capability that HP's had in place for some time, and that since when you're working from home, you tend to lose concentration because you're focused on what you're doing, and the chances of you running out of ink or toner or some consumable probably happens more disproportionately because you're working at home and you just don't. Oh no, I don't have that important ink or other consumable available to me. HP for years has had that model in place where you have a subscription service where if I run out of toner. So let's talk about that, because that can come in very handy if you're working from home.
It's interesting, and we're seeing a lot of that
pick up.
I mean, especially right now, where if people are in shelter in place or lockdown, we're in lots of countries around the world, being able to have your work needs met, and in many cases, your education or homeschooling needs met, people are needing to print more than they have in the past. And so as those needs have come up, and many people cannot leave their homes, that printer we have instant ink programs in our all of our color inkjet printers, and they can order the ink based on your own usage, and it comes in the mail and you never have to worry about it. And while that was a customer insight we've picked up on a number of years, I think even more so now, it's providing a essential service really for people right now to have that ink always on your doorstep. But we've also had, new solutions for folks who are just, if people are looking at, Excel spreadsheets, or they need to print things that are multi-page documents to read. We also just came out with HP Never Stop globally. And that's where you load it and you don't have to fill it for a few months at a time. And so from both a low cost of ownership, as well as just not having to worry about it. We've heard that from a lot of our home and micro businesses, especially in the accounting, finance, real estate, those places where just being able to have a very low cost printer, they don't need to do photos, they don't need other things. So we've got both, instant ink services, and then Never Stop for a lot of that monochrome print too.
What about, do you guys, right now, Annalise, I think you're using earbuds, and, Kobi, you're using the microphone on the laptop that I guess you're using. I have found in my experience that, it's really great to have over-the-ear headphones, especially, if you're focusing, you've got a lot of kids and, they're playing games, and especially now because everybody's cooped up at home. Do you guys have a preference for headphones? Is there any particular brand that you like, or what are you big fans of just using, over-the-ear headphones? I have to use them because it just helps me get better audio quality, obviously, when we're doing podcasts like this. But thoughts on that?
So I would say, for me, sorry, Annalise.
No, go ahead.
So I would say, depending on that, for work, I am personally, when I have my environment more louded with my kids, I'm using the Omen headset that we use them for gaming, because they have noise cancellation, but they have also some ink. They have some cooling, and when you sit a lot of time, many hours with headset, it started to be hot. And I like the cooling elements of them that
Yes.
they make. So I'm using the Omen headset.
And by the way, Kobi, I bet you look very cool with them, because the Omen headphones are not just great sounding, but if you see the person wearing them, you look very cool. It makes you look 10 years
there is
older.
light and stuff like that, and my son really think I'm cool when I'm wearing them.
That's right. And it really does work. It makes them very cool.
Oh, yeah.
I interchange some, because sometimes if I'm doing kind of a one-on-one and somebody's in a car doing something else, I'll also go to my mobile phone and walk around while I'm doing one-on-ones. And so I've got different headsets, to more mobile ones versus tethered ones. The gaming ones, I'm not sure how cool I look, but I have used them, and they do keep your ears very cool, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So they are nice to wear after a long time.
In the few minutes we have left here, I do want to talk about a couple of things that I think, just to flip back to what HP has been doing on the corporate side during this coronavirus situation. Within the last 24 hours, HP had a big announcement with its partners
Mm-hmm.
that they're really mobilizing their 3D printer technology. And,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people, and maybe we should just get into this for a second, a lot of mainstream people who are not in the business like we are don't understand, and maybe don't have a full appreciation for what 3D printing can do. It's kind of an esoteric type of topic. Mm-hmm. But let's talk a little bit about that, because 3D printing, particularly right now, it could be very, very crucial in terms of giving mm-hmm. incredible tools to different manufacturing companies, medical companies, in terms of giving them just yet another powerful tool in the toolkit to really combat this virus. So, Annalise, I'll tee it up for you, but let's talk a little bit about that, because it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been a pioneer in the 3D print space, and really building from our ink technology and being able to put lots of millions of particles, and then think about how, not just on paper, but put them in layers. And so mm-hmm. as you think about the digital manufacturing space, the fact that you don't have to go set up a plant, to run parts to test for quality and make sure that you build 5,000 parts, until you understand your failure rates and all of that, is digital manufacturing's totally changed. And so mm-hmm. being able to, we've gone out and looked at, mobilizing our 3D print technology and our partner network that already knows how to do digital manufacturing, and then coordinate and do parts around ventilators, respirators, face masks. I mean, all of these needs that are coming up, right? That are definitely a huge unmet demand, and really in a crisis mode where we already know about flattening the curve and different things. We've got to help our frontline healthcare workers. And so even things like plastic door handles, things that if you set a door handle in a different way, you can open it with a knee or with an elbow or something different. And so they're really kind of testing all kinds of things. About 1,000 parts have already been donated to local hospitals. And then this partner network of HP people and the partners who make parts, they're really, taking it on as kind of a SWAT team effort, bringing their experience together and testing and building and getting things done to keep up with the needs that are out there. Right. I mean, there's many people, we can't do it by ourselves, but mm-hmm. Really leaning in to take that technology and accelerate the pace of getting things created and built.
No, it really is amazing stuff, because again, the average person who doesn't know a lot about manufacturing, to create the tool to manufacturing something, to fabricate that tool, is a very complex project.
Time consuming, yeah.
It's time consuming. It requires expertise. You may only be able to do it in a certain location, across the country. And what HP has been able to do with its 3D printing capability, I saw that in, of course, real time when we had the summit meeting a few weeks ago. It's just mind-boggling, the capability that can be deployed in a very efficient, very productive, and as we can see in this crisis right now, it can really help from an immediacy, really, solve problems right now. There's not that, you don't have that typical historical delay that, hey, okay, I have a tool now to build something, but it's going to take me 3 weeks to actually build a tool. you know?
Right. Well, and you think about what's going on with logistics and everything else. So
Yes.
it used to be you built lots of parts and then distributed them around the world. Now you can distribute the digital files
Yes.
and have them all local. So you're not
Yes.
dealing with customs, cost, air freight, cargo,
Oh.
all the challenges that are really in the environment we have, especially in this, COVID-19 space. So.
Right. And the other thing, and it was almost prescient in the demo that we saw up there a few weeks ago, is that you guys have a marvelous reapplication, repurposing of inkjet technology. For those people who don't know how an inkjet printer works, and you'll, Kobi or Annalise, you'll do a better job of describing this, but, the print heads that actually, apply ink to a piece of paper, there's, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of print head, of almost naked to the almost invisible to the naked eye, and that inkjet technology capability has now been repurposed. It's called microfluidics. And it's just, and it has a tremendous application with pharmaceutical companies who can test dosages of different drugs, where it would take, literally it was a very manual type of operation. And the reapplication, repurposing of this technology allows to really automate that process in a much more efficient fashion. Do one of you want to take that? Because I really think that it needs to really be talked about for a minute.
You do a great job. You've learned. You're an expert.
I learned very well. I listened to your presentations.
Microfluidics. They are. If you think about the nozzles on that print head, they are thinner than a sliver of a human hair. And so when you put a million of those together and or many different print heads, you can do a lot of different things. And so we've taken them and really pivoted to create, bio printers basically, and cartridges that can go in them to be able to test medicines and all kinds of things. We're doing a lot now with the vaccine research. We've donated our machines and cartridges to be able to do that. And if you think about, the ability to disperse medicine on skin, or the ability to get those kind of vaccines or samples and test or whatever, it's an amazing kind of element of nanotechnology when you think about the ability of how much you can do by when and how fast. And create those test cases and test scenarios so that they can bring those solutions of vaccines and medicines to market quicker, as well as figure out new ways of how to disperse them as well.
Right. Well, this has been really a terrific podcast. I mean, I've certainly learned a lot. I think you guys are doing wonderful work. HP is doing tremendous. I almost want to categorize it as humanitarian work. It's not strictly humanitarian work, because a lot of this technology comes out of its ability to sell products into the private sector. But I think I applaud HP what you guys are doing. I think folks are certainly the world is changing right now, and I think we will change for in a much better way after we get through it. I'm a very optimistic person. I know both you folks are. We're going to get through this crisis. We're going to be looking backward. I don't know if we'll be laughing as we look backward at it, but I think we'll emerge from this in a much stronger way, in a much more compelling way, in terms of hoping that this never happens again. And certainly we'll deal with that as it goes on. Kobi, do you have any final thoughts for the audience before we sign off?
No, I would say, first of all, thank you for the time. And let's say to everybody, stay safe.
Annalise, any final thoughts?
I think we will get through it. Work from home is definitely going to change, and it's here to stay. And, technology will never be a substitute for human interaction. And so the fact that we figure out how to manage both of those, our future of work will certainly evolve, but we'll definitely get through it, all of us together.
Terrific words. Well, thanks to both of you folks for calling in today's podcast. Thanks to the More Insights and Strategy audience for listening to today's podcast. Please follow us in our usual social media suspect partners. That's Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And please be safe with your families out there. And until next time, have a great week.